Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to these online classes. For 2 3 days, we missed the classes because of the network issue, but don't worry, we will finish up our class on time. As we have been discussing on the books, the poetical books, and we are particularly in the book of Psalms. And last time we have been dealing with the title of the book. I think we finished there in the title of the book. Now, theme and purpose of the book of Psalms. Okay, theme and purpose of the book of Psalms. Okay, let's go to your notes. The Psalms provide us with a message of hope and comfort through the common theme of worship. They are, in essence, an antidote to fear and complaining. Through a personal response to the person and the work of God, they are an expression of the worshipped faith and spiritual life of Israel. In the Psalms, we have a mirror of the heart of God's people, recording the simple, universal human experiences of men in the light of God's people, the persons, promises, plan, and presence. Okay, theme and purposes. The Psalms provide us with a message of hope and comfort through the common theme of worship. We have been discussing that every Psalms has a common theme. Okay, of course there are some psalms that are not clear to the theme, but most of them are entitled with a theme, and we understand what kind of psalms it is by the theme. Okay, so it's a message of hope and comfort through a common theme. They are, in essence, an antidote to fear and complaining. Okay, they are, in essence, the meaning of essence, there is the quality which makes something what it is. The quality which makes something what it is. Or in simple word, in reality. Okay, in essence means in reality. Okay, that's the simple explanation or the simple meaning of essence. They are, in essence, an antidote. What do you mean by antidote? Antidote is a medicine taken to counteract a poison reduce. Whenever a person is taking a poison, knowingly or unknowingly, okay, then we inject another injection so that the poison will be reduced, okay, or the poison will be harmless again. So that kind of medicines are called antidote. Okay, antidote, or in other words, it is to relieve. Okay, so here the explanation of your sentence is they are, in essence, they are in reality to relieve, or a relief to fear and complaining. So the book of Psalms, when you read the book of Psalms, it, in real sense, it makes you to relieve the fear and the complaining of your life. Okay, so as we have been discussing that Psalms is a message of hope and comfort. It comforts you in the times of your fearness and in the time of your complaining, or in your frustration time. Okay, so it is an essence, an antidote, or in other words, it is in real sense a relief to fear and complaining. Through a personal responses to the person and work of God. Okay, through a personal responses to the person and the work of God. When you read the book of Psalms, you see the psalmist or the author is reacting to God, and sometimes they complain, sometimes they give the petition, and sometimes they ask God to do something in their lives, and we see what God is doing in their lives. Okay, so personal responses, when God rebuked them or when God talked to them, how do they respond? Okay, by that, reading that, we can get a message of hope and comfort. Okay, so they are an expression of the worship, faith, and spiritual life of Israel. Of course, that is written with the context of the Israel, what God is doing to these people, and these people, they express the worship, the art of worship of the Israel. Then the art, then how do they keep their faith, and how do they live a spiritual life? Okay, so it is all about, actually all about the life of the Israel people. In the Psalms, we have a mirror of the heart of God's people, recording the simple, universal human experiences made in the light of God's person, promise, plan, and presence. So, Psalms is like a mirror. It is very simple recording of the person. There is no, complicated words, or there is not no much strong doctrine, or no, a passage to be confused. No, it is very simple. They express their own life. They express their own experience, and through that, what how God is dealing with them. So by looking at that one, of course, that is in the context of the Israel, but the lesson is universal. It is universal human experiences. The way that they faced the experience, we are also facing the experiences. So at the times of our trouble, how do we come to God? We look at the book of Psalms, and we understand how we should react whenever, according to the occasion that we faced. Okay, so it's a simple matter for every one of us, because it is very simple. And whenever people start reading the Bible for first time, they directly go to the book of Psalms, because it is very easy, and it is very much easy to understand. At the same time, it is easy to get or apply in our hearts. Okay, so we say that it is a matter when you look to those personal experiences. Okay. So number one, this is a message of hope and comfort through the life experiences of those psalmists, and also how God is dealing with them. Okay, so when you read that, we have hope and comfort. Okay, so that is in the first paragraph. And the second paragraph, let's go to the second paragraph. Second paragraph. Okay. As a collection of 150 psalms, they naturally covered a great variety of feelings, circumstances, and themes. This means it is difficult to make any generalizations about a theme or purpose, but it is safe to say that all the psalms embodied a personal responses on the part of the believer toward the godness and the grace of God. Let's read all. Often they include a record of the psalmist's own inner emotions of discouragement, anxiety, or thankfulness, even when faced with the opposition of God's enemies, or in view of God's varied providences. But whether the psalmist is occupied with a mourning or a joyous theme, he is always expressing himself as in the presence of the living God. There are a few psalms, of course, which mostly contain the thoughts and revelation of God himself, such as Psalms 2, but these are most exceptional. Most of the psalms survey the word of God, his attributes. They are messianic in their scope, in anticipation of the coming Messiah. So Psalms, as we know, is a collection of 150 psalms or songs. They naturally covered a great variety of feelings, circumstances, and themes. So these 150, they have different feelings. They write in different circumstances, and they write in different themes. Therefore, it is difficult to make any generalizations about a theme or purpose. We cannot specialize a theme because Psalms 1, the theme might be different, Psalms 2, the theme might be different. So it depends upon the particular Psalms to decide the theme and the purpose. So, as a whole, the book of Psalms, we cannot decide the theme and the purpose. Okay, you have to understand that. But it is safe to say that all the Psalms embody, that means all the Psalms include a person. Embodied means include, okay? So all the Psalms include a personal responses on the part of the believer toward the godliness and the grace of God. So every Psalms actually include a personal response. How can we respond on the part of toward godliness and the grace of God? What is our response to goodness and the grace of God? Okay, so every Psalms has that part, okay, that theme. Okay, our how do we respond toward the goodness and the grace of God? Often they include a record of the psalmist's own inner emotion of discouragement, anxiety, or thankfulness, even when faced with the opposition of God's enemies or in the view of God's varied providences. Okay. Often they include a record of the psalmist's own inner emotion of discouragement. The psalmist's inner emotions, whether they are in discouragement, whether they are in anxiety, whether they are in thankfulness, or even faced with the opposition of God's enemy, or in view of God's varied providences. That means in view of God's varieties of protection and care. God took care of them in different ways. Okay, that what varied providences mean. God protected them or cared them in different ways. Okay, so with all these experiences, okay, whether it might be in the sorrow, it might be in the time of thankfulness, whether they are facing with the opposition, or whether they are receiving the protection and the care of God in different ways. In all of this, okay, the psalmist occupied with mourning or a joyous theme. He is always expresses himself as in the presence of the living God. So the whole thing is, whether it is in the time of frustration, whether it might be in the time of joyous time, whether they might be facing the enemies of the God's enemies, or in the time of their mourn, whatever it may be, they express the inner hearts not before people but before God. Okay, before God. So before the living God. But there are some few psalms, of course, which mostly contain the thoughts and the revelation of God Himself, such as Psalms 2. It is all that talks about the revelation of God Himself, or the Messianic Psalms. Okay, but these are exceptional. But mostly, many of the psalms survey the Word of God, His attributes, and are messianic in their scope, in anticipation of the Messiah, of the coming of Messiah. Anticipation means expected or looking forward for the coming of the Messiah. So these are the psalms, the Messianic psalms that survey the Word of God, His attributes, and also the Messiah in their scopes. Okay, these are exceptional, but most of the psalms are personal experiences that we can get every psalms that we can get every lesson from there, and then every psalms has their own theme and their own purpose. Okay, for example, when you read Psalms 23, you know the theme, you know the purpose there. And Psalms 23 may not be exactly like Psalms 24. So every Psalms, since we have 150 collected songs, so we have different themes and different purpose. But generally, we understand that it is a message of hope and comfort, because we get experiences from the life experiences of those psalmists and the response of God to their life. Okay, so that is theme and purpose of the book of Psalms. Okay, next we have keyword, key verse, and the key chapter, the key people. This I will not be taking class because there's nothing much to explain. And by the way, you have to know that the key verse are that depends upon you or depend upon the readers. Okay, for example, you might like Psalms 119 and 105. For some of you, for some it may be Psalms 1 and verse 3. Okay, or some might be Psalms 19 verse 1. Okay, it depends upon the readers. Okay, the key verses and even the key chapter. Okay, and the key people, we know that it is David and Korah. Okay, so key word, key verses, and key chapter, key people. Key people, we know only it is David and Korah. Okay, by the next class we will see Christ as scenes in the book of Psalms. Okay, since we have a network issue here, I cannot upload more than 20 minutes classes. Okay, so you have to bear with me, but as I said, we will finish our class on time. Don't worry. Okay, have a nice day. God bless you all.